The following program is being presented to you by a community producer. The statements, views, and opinions expressed are not necessarily those of ALC TV or the City of Avon Lake.
Welcome to Common Sense. Common Sense is a series of shows that feature interviews with interesting people so that we can get to know who they are, what they do, and what's making sense to them and what doesn't in a clear, concise, and direct way. I'm Rudy Breglia, and today I'll be interviewing Terry Smith. Let me get all of these: an accomplished pianist, actor, radio personality, computer programmer, and a fine human being. Welcome, Terry. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Rudy. Thank you for having me.
Okay.
You forgot husband and father.
Oh, that's true. Congratulations on that.
Well, I just mentioned it because my wife, Erin, our 30th anniversary is Sunday.
Well, congratulations, 30 years.
So 4 boys there in North Olmsted. So
okay, all
got
right.
that going for
well,
me.
Well, you can show them this tape and say that they were part of it.
Right.
Well, welcome to Common Sense. Please, Terry, give us some background: where you were born, where you've lived, that kind of thing. Give us a feeling for that.
Well, I was born in Elyria.
Okay.
And
nearby.
You ever heard of that?
Yeah, I have.
So just lived there on 4th Street my whole life growing up, and my dad was from Lorraine, though.
Okay.
And, he was one of 5 brothers, 5 sons of the Smith family on 7th Street in Lorraine.
Okay.
And we still have some relatives around here, cousins. I still have brothers and sisters in Elyria, and my uncle, I think we mentioned before, he was a ear, nose, and throat doctor here in Avon Lake. His office was in Lorraine.
Oh, okay.
T.L. Smith, and so he still has some daughters. He had 1 son and then 7 daughters.
Wow.
And
a harem.
What's that?
A harem.
My dad had 4 boys and 4 girls, so we both had 8, I think.
I see, big family.
So anyhow, so I grew up there, and then went to St. Mary's grade school, and then Elyria High School. With all those others before me, we ran out of money for the Elyria Catholic. So
I see.
Although one of my boys did go to Elyria Catholic, graduated 2013, I think. David.
Okay.
So then went to Elyria High School, and then went to Miami University. So.
Oh, okay.
My thing lately is, with the acting, and I do computer programming during the day, but as a balance, I like to do some type of fine arts. I've always played piano a little bit, even at 4th Street there in Elyria. My dad played a little bit, my mom played a little bit, So there was always a piano in the house. So I didn't really take lessons then. There was a few sheet music, little sheet music around. One was "Love Is Blue," blue, my world is blue.
Yeah.
So I played that, but my dad played like a sonatina, Kula sonatina, and he's pretty good. And actually, my grandmother, his mother, went to Oberlin Conservatory of Music, so she was really good. We used to go over there and visit on 7th Street in Lorraine and get her to play the banjo picker. No, Dance of the Demons. My mom played banjo picker. So, she was real Catholic. My grandmother, 2 of my uncles were Jesuit priests.
Wow.
And so it was kind of surprising to see her play Dance of the Demons. But it was really good. So I probably was part of my interest in piano, along with my mother and father. And so I didn't start practicing or taking lessons really until college. I took a class piano at Miami, where you have 10 pianos where they it's all electronic. You put the headphones on, and the instructor can hear you individually.
Oh, okay.
And so, and after that, I took lessons. I lived in Akron after college, worked at Goodyear, my first job out of college, computer programming. And so I always kept up with the piano a little bit. So now after 50 years later, 40 some, you add a song here and there and it adds up. So
I see.
So with that, I started playing like at assisted living, senior residences and things. An occasional wedding reception, just kind of ambient music. So I've got a repertoire. I like to memorize the music. So
I think a little later we're going to have an example of that
okay.
As part of the recording. Tell us about computer programming. Is it really as complex as I think it is? Or is it something that you learn to do and it becomes fairly easy for you?
Yeah, I think like anything that has a lot of steps to it. As long as you can go through each step, and it's satisfying, kind of like math. I mean, a lot of people say they can't do math or don't like it. I don't know, but to me, it's like. It's just one little step at a time. As long as you can remember the steps, more or less, you can get through it. And I remember reading years ago that mathematicians were one of the most successful, most happiest people. And I think it's just satisfying because you know it's right, usually,
Okay.
Like programming too, you know it's right. If you got the wrong answer, or if something's not displaying right in a report, you know, and then you go back and find the bug, and you fix it. So once it's right, it's satisfying that you completed it correctly, and all the numbers add up if you're doing a report for balance sheets or something. And so it's like anything that takes some skills, some training and experience, but it's not even rocket science probably. It's like that. But
well, I can see the parallel between playing music and programming. It's different steps and.
Yeah, there is each measure. There's a count to it, and so you can look at it that way. And it's a lot of things inform each other. Like you do something in like an acting, like a poem or something, like a Shakespeare, which I've done a couple of productions of. And then, in high school and college or. High school, you take Shakespeare and it's like, why are they saying it like this? Why don't they just say what they mean?
Yeah.
But once, like now, you look into the iambic pentameter and to realize, there's 10 syllables per line, and it's kind of interesting, even that mathematically. And then the stress is like normally on the second syllable in each of those 10 syllables. So it's like, that kind of translates to music, the stress is on the second or the fourth count.
Right.
So it's...
it all fits together.
Yeah. I think like math, and similar to piano, when you get it right, or anything, humans like to do when they get it right, it's satisfying. So, but Bertrand Russell, he said, he was a mathematician along with a political philosopher and writer, but as a mathematician, he said it's a sense of certainty that mathematicians have, because it's either right or wrong, and you can prove it that it's right, and so you have a sense of certainty that you don't have in a lot of human daily life.
Yeah,
things.
it makes you happy. Why did you pursue a career in programming? I guess you already said it is something that's satisfying.
Well, I went to college there, and my roommate and I, Dave Wilbert from Malaria, we still friends, and we didn't know what we wanted to study, and I remember liking physics in high school, so I just said, well, my major is physics. I like to joke, say, well, I thought I was signing up for phys ed, but so I took physics, and but I guess and once I got in there as a elective, I took some political science, and so so it got me thinking, like, well, political science seems to have something to do with the real world. The people are doing things that affect their lives, and the physics, I I mean, I could have been an engineer when I look back on it now, but at the time I didn't know what I would do with it, so I kind of lost interest, I guess. Although I did take the co-requisite math, the calculus series, along at the same time, and so I kept up with the math, and then like the second year, someone was in systems who did programming. He said, well, you might like programming, so I took a programming course and did end up liking that, and I ended up majoring in that, so.
Okay, that's the way it worked out.
Back when you had a deck of cards, you had big
Oh,
boxes
yeah,
of cards,
right,
and
right.
if you dropped them, you're
Yeah, all mixed up.
so you draw lines on them to, if they dropped them, you could at least get them back in the same spot.
I see.
So,
How did you balance your technical career as a programmer with your love of the arts? How do you balance that in your own mind? Or you see them as one and the same?
well, I think it's even now it's like a break. It's a respite from the rest of your
okay.
working life. I look at the programming as really doing something. Whereas arts is doing something, but it's more like a celebration or a break. Something that like you like to do, and you don't really. Some people, that's a debatable thing, whether you should do what you like, or do. Or like what you do,
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes maybe that's the highest where you actually like you play piano or you play tennis and you go that extreme and become the best at it. For me, it's both of those things are interests of mine, but I like to do them as a break, in my spare time, and so it's satisfying just to take a break, sit down at the piano for 5 minutes, or something that if you're having a good day, you might play for an hour straight, play all the things and if my wife is not in the house at the time, she likes listening to it too. It's right in the living room, so
I see.
Can't watch TV.
Tell us about your recent radio show.
Well, I've been doing these speeches, like Gettysburg Address for the North Olmsted Memorial Day Parade a couple of years in a row. And then I was at a political meeting, and someone, I said the gentleman there, George Popovich from Lakewood, that I do these speeches, but I guess the thing was that what led to the speeches before the radio show was, enjoying doing the acting. I thought, what can I do on my own that I don't need a director for or a stage or something? I thought, well, just memorize something. So the Gettysburg Address came to mind 7 years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
So I did that. I, recited to my wife driving in the car, and it really means something. Then it takes you into the history of it, and it's very beautiful. Once you got it inside you, not just hear it somewhere. So that got me started. Then I'd look at the calendar, when something was coming up, I'd say, well, what's coming up for St. Patrick's Day? So I find a Robert F. Kennedy speech that's really nice. It talks about Irish heritage, not just, drinking and stuff. So,
okay.
So I like doing that, and then thought, well, I ran into I did a speech at a dinner, actually the one that's coming up Thursday, the American Nationalities Movement. And I've been doing that for the last number of years, few years. They have a dinner twice a year. I did one there. I think it was a John F. Kennedy inaugural address, like a 5-minute version of that.
Uh-huh.
And George Satari was in the audience with Steve Krause, and they saw that speech. They thought, thought that was the best speech of the evening, so they asked me to come on the radio. They had a radio show Monday nights on 12:20 a.m.
Okay.
It's called the Round Table. So I would go on there on occasion and do if something comes up like anniversary of Patrick Henry.
Yeah.
March 23rd, and so I'd go in there and then do the speech. And then of course, audience can't tell that you're doing it by heart, on the radio, but George would stress that, well, Terry's doing this from memory, and they were complimentary. So but then I thought, well, I've got a number of speeches. Instead of going into George's show, I just thought I'll get my own, you know. So I looked into getting time myself in a show. I just wanted to do like a couple hours worth, but you have to sign up for like a 6-month contract. So I did that, and I was able to, integrate the piano and, the introduction to the speech on the radio, so I could fill an hour, once a month.
Okay.
For like, do that for about, I think, 10, 12 months. So.
Oh, okay.
Just once a month. So.
What was your first professional acting gig? And is that a term that's still used, gigs? No?
Yeah. Gig means paid. So when you say gig, they know you're getting paid. So
I see. Okay.
Most of the community theater, you don't get paid. A guy I play tennis with says, why do people do that? But you just do it. At least you don't have to pay, to do theater. It's something you like to do.
Okay.
So, but paid, I think it was just being an extra in the movie, The Avengers, that they shot here.
Okay.
2016, I think.
Okay.
So there's no lines.
Okay, but
they paid. It's a big production. That's why I wanted to do it, just to see what it's like on a big production like that. Multi-million-dollar production and all these cranes with cameras and hundreds of people, and it's like they feed everyone. They told us to come, bring some clothes, 3 sets of clothes, so they could see it. They didn't pick anything that I brought, and then they had new clothes for me, to wear in these scenes. So, and I'm just one of like 200 in public square, and if you stop the video, you can't see me.
Can't get you. Huh?
But anyway, I paid like $15 an hour. I mean, I probably lost money, doing it, but it was because I had to take work off at least one day for that. So but it was paid. So I had done another movie in town that didn't pay the extras. It was Take Shelter. I don't remember that. They did a lot of it in Lorain County with Jessica Chastain, Michael Shannon. At the time,
okay,
they weren't big names, and so since then, Jessica Chastain's got the Oscar last year. So it's fun to do those things. I don't do much of that anymore. But
what first attracted you to be an actor in movies and plays, either gigs or voluntary as an actor?
Well, I stopped and when I was doing the programming, I always liked the program, but I didn't always get into the business that I was supporting. And so I thought, well, what do I really like to do? And I thought, well, I'd like to play piano, I like to play tennis, so maybe I should pursue those. So I did to some extent. I played tennis and became a coach at my sister Ann's had acquaintance who was the head coach of Fairview, and they needed a JV coach, so I coached there for a couple of years, coaching and getting paid for that. And then with the piano, I'd go to nursing homes, assisted livings, and get paid. I still do that occasionally, and it's performing, So I thought, well, it's. And then I think actually my wife Erin saw it in a newspaper in North Olmsted that the local community theater was having a play, and so we actually both got in that play, and so that was really the first performing I did, but it got good feedback. The audience and the director. You just memorize your lines. It's a good feeling to memorize your lines, and then once you memorize your lines, you can say things with confidence. I think that's what attracts people to it. You can act like you're confident.
I see.
So it was fun, doing that. It was RUR, Rossum's Universal Robots, and that's where the word robot comes from. The text of that play. So it was it's about robots taking over the world. And my wife liked it because I have a line where I say, "It's my fault." I tried to make them. She goes, "What was that again?"
So, what are your favorite roles as an actor that you've been involved in?
Probably the Capulet, Juliet's father.
Oh, okay.
Romeo and Juliet, because it's I don't have any daughters, so I thought, well, this would be a chance to see what it's like to have daughters, and takes you into the, he starts tearing into Julia because she doesn't want to marry Paris, right? And he's saying, why not? You know, you've got something here, and what are you? You know, he starts, you know, really tearing her apart. You know, so you're going to be there Thursday next, or I'll drag you hither on a third. You know, and so it's like, but it's in the iambic pentameter. You know, the language. You know, it's, you know, it makes sense after you get into it, and the people through the ages, you know, they know the text so well that they you know, if you don't, the first time into it, you don't understand it all. You know, you say, why are they talking like that? But you know, once you know it, and it is, you know, it is essentially English, but it's very heightened. You know, it's about noble things and about emotions, and so it's done in such a way that you can't help but appreciate, you know, that type of text. And so I just even I like reading about, you know, even that stuff. You know, like there's a couple of authors I like, Cicely Berry, who wrote a couple of books on, you know, the actor and the text, the actor and the voice, and you know, the actor and the text. She goes through, you know, very simple and, you know, matter-of-factly, you know, on a down-to-earth basis, you know, why, you know, this is accented, or, you know, things that are what makes it heightened, you know, what makes it so beautiful. So, you know, you just read about that, you can't help but appreciate it. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, what are the elements of acting? You talked about them a little bit. Can you break it down to elements?
Yeah, thinking about this coming before
knowing the words, and you know.
Well, I think it's has a lot. It's a mixture of things coming to mind, like action. You know, I do a speech by Oliver Wendell Holmes, who, on a Memorial Day speech, he's talking about people that, you know, fought and died. He says, "You must believe something and want something with all your might. You know, you must, you know, share this action and passion, or, you know, in your life." So, action is what everyone likes to do, whether you know, it's action like playing sports, or, you know, doing something, you know, on a job or something, and or whether it's mental or physical. You know, you can do something like even on an assembly line, you're doing something, you know, and then you go home. And so it's acting. You know, it's, you know, you're acting, you're doing something up there, telling a story, and so you're acting, and it's also an element of creativity. You know, the arts has not just action like sports and, you know, work, but you know, the creativity element. And for acting, the creativity part is, you know, creating that character. I mean, you've got the words, but if you did, you know, Capulet, you'd do it differently than me, because you'd create your own version of it, essentially.
Okay.
And you'd see certain parts of it, and parts of you come out, you know, like just like me, like parts of me come out. You know, I associate with certain things, either my sisters or my mother or father, you know, and then you learn about that. So it's it's
understand. Do you follow a certain pattern or school of acting? You know, I know there are different schools that approach acting differently.
Yeah, there's basically what I know, there's two schools: the method acting and then technical. Now, Laurence Olivier was more of I understand, a technical actor, where he'd be very conscious of every gesture, and, you know, the tone of his voice, and whereas a method actor, I guess Brando was, you know, one of the first that did that, but it becomes from Konstantin Stanislavski, you know, famous Russian actor and director back in the late 1800s, and I think he died around 1930 or something. But he was from a well-to-do family, Stanislavski, and, you know, he enjoyed the acting and then directing, and, you know, Chekhov would do a lot of the writing for the Moscow theater. And so that method acting is where you just put yourself, you know, some like Dustin Hoffman, you know, used to go in the method, and he would, even off camera, he'd stay in character, and it's kind of, I guess that's the true method. And I mean, Laurence Olivier had a movie with Dustin Hoffman once, and and Dustin Hoffman's sweating, and being in character, and Olivia says, "Why don't you just try acting?" But but you can draw on both sides of it. Whether your method, you got to be conscious of, like right now I'm using my hands. That might not go well if you're filming this. In a movie, the director would say, do you know you're moving your hands all over? And so
you draw from both schools. How do you prepare for a role? How did you prepare for Capulet?
Well, the first part, which is the first thing people mention after a play, is the memorization. That they're usually impressed with just the memorization, but usually that's just the first part of it, the first step. Memorizing it. I mean, that's a big step. The important thing is to just get the words right.
Right.
For the audience's sake. But for me, the most enjoyable, that gets most joy when you know the words, but then you as you're doing them, or as you're doing the rehearsals and stuff, you think of things and you say, "Oh, I'm going to do it this way." It's the same word, but you now know what it what you said before me. I might just know the words. If I just cue off of some word you said and not really listen to what you said, it's not. If you say your line, and I don't listen, I'm just waiting for my line. A lot of people, you can see that,
Yeah.
in some theaters, you say, well, he's not listening, he's just waiting for his line. So, but if I really listen to you, see, for me, the goal is to really be in the zone. Like you say that, and I'm really listening to it, and I react, in reality, like I would react in real. And so the challenge is to do that night in, night out, like in a play, because you have to do it 50 times, right? You say, well, I could do it once maybe, but it is a kind of a therapeutic thing to do it every time, and because if you can do it, you can have that same feeling every time. Even people that have to cry, they can find themselves, they can get into that moment and zone and do it. I guess every night. So
it'd be pretty tough. What responses are you trying to elicit from the audience when you play and act, when acting?
Well, you want them to think that they're really watching something going on, the story.
Real.
Yeah, so the thing that I think, you have to be truthful, whether even if you're playing a villain. I heard John, I forget his name now, but he played a villain, and he when he did it correctly, he got a thrill. I mean, but it might be doing something bad, but since he did it right and correctly, and truthfully, he got a good feeling for it, and the audience. I guess the reason I want the audience to do is just, well, if it's a good play, it's got some overall meaning to it. The meaning of the whole thing, and so you want to contribute to that story that has some moral message, or if it's fun, you want it to be funny and makes you think afterwards, and so it's and I guess it's a search for truth, I think, in anything, and you can. It's hard to find sometimes in politics, or even with your friends, or what you do day to day. Sometimes you have to put masks on, do more acting, I realize, but some people say that they feel more alive on the stage, and it's more truthful, when you're actually on the stage in your daily life. So.
How do you use your acting skills in your work of performing famous historical speeches from memory? How do you use your acting skills? And I guess the answer is you use those skills in.
Yeah, I mean, if you have to give a presentation or something, you prepare for it, and see what you want to talk about, and drown yourself in details, if it's to a lot of people, and so some of those things are transferable and vice versa, from work to art to acting to, just speaking clearly, and you know, acting in a play, you're working with people. You have to listen to them. You have to listen to the director, and sometimes you have to understand the director has. I used to be bad where I'd say, well, question the director. Well, why don't we do it this way? That doesn't go over too big,
No.
So you got to respect the director's role. Say, well, because it's really he or she. It's up to them to shape the thing, and so it's you understand as an actor, you're going to do how they want you to do it. Some of them are open to discussion and say, well, how do you feel about this? And that's fine. But in the end, it's the director's call. Similar with work, you might think you're being slighted or your boss is giving you something or not giving you something, and you have to deal with that. So if you respect the role, you can that type of thing transfers over to work. And
what gave you the idea to perform famous speeches? I thought you mentioned a little something about that.
I think it was, when you're not doing a play, and sometimes, rehearsals are like a few weeks, 3 or 4 weeks before, and you can't take that kind of time. And so I thought, well, what can I do on my own that I don't need a director for or even a space? And so I did the Gettysburg Address, and then I thought, well, I looked up as Memorial Day a appropriate place to do Gettysburg Address, and it turns out it is. He didn't give it on Memorial Day. He gave it in November, but it is done, many times as Memorial Day speech. And so I went to North Olmsted, the Memorial Day parade they're having, and I asked just before the end of the parade if I could do the speech, and he goes, oh, well, we got the mayor coming up and we got singing maybe next year. And I said, well, it's only 2.5 minutes. Can I just do it, and you can see if you want to do it or not? And so I did it. Yeah, let's do that. So that was the first thing I did, and it went well. And so I thought, well, I can continue to do that, I guess. So I did Memorial Day speeches, and like I say, something was coming up on the calendar. I'd look, and one thing was Martin Luther King's 50th anniversary of his death. It was like 2018, and so I knew Robert F. Kennedy's. He did a speech in Indianapolis right after Martin Luther King was assassinated, and he gave a speech to Indianapolis, and so somebody saw me give that at a monologue kind of thing at the Urban Film Festival in Shaker Heights, and then he worked at Cleveland State as a professor, and then he asked me to come and do that at the 50th anniversary at the Greater Abyssinia Baptist Church in East Cleveland there. So I did that since he gave a Martin Luther King speech, and then I did the Robert F. Kennedy speech. Mm-hmm. So.
What are your favorite speeches, and what makes them stand out? In your own mind.
That's one of them, the Robert F. Kennedy. It's it's about
pretty famous
black and white, racial divides, and it's a speech is great because it applies to today as much as it did, almost as much as it did at the time. So we've got that going on today constantly, and so it's it was done impromptu. He didn't plan it. He was on come from the airport to the place he was supposed to give the speech, a stump speech, but then he found out MLK was assassinated and gave this speech. But that's a good one. I like doing even John F. Kennedy's, ask now what your country.
Yeah, that's a good.
So, Patrick Henry, when I did my radio show, the overarching theme was freedom. So it's a lot of these things I do are patriotic, the military creeds, the soldier's creed, the Navy sailor's creed, the rifleman's creed for the Marines and so forth, Navy SEAL ethos, and Gettysburg Address, and a lot of political things, but those are they're usually to do with freedom, and
it's kind of a central theme.
Yeah, and even like I do some with sports, like Lou Gehrig speech, and Vince Lombardi, and Muhammad Ali speech, and it's like they're about sports, but this is what we do when we have freedom. We can participate in sports, and the speeches I do, like from theater or a play or a poem, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, they're free. I mean, you have poetry in non-free countries, but for me, doing these things are what you and I can do as free people, and we need the military. We need to defend our country, and so you need the patriotic. I mean, so that to support freedom patriotically, legislatively is probably the highest, most important thing to consider. I mean, they work together. You have to have the politics and the people doing work and stuff, but it's symbiotic relationship. So I like the patriotic things, but I guess it depends on the occasion. Lou Gehrig is a symbol. I mean, he knew he had the disease. They demanded a day of recognition for him at Yankee Stadium, and he could have gone out there bemoaning everything, but he said, "I'm the luckiest man on the face of the earth."
Yeah.
He went on to say, what made him so lucky, and so to be an example like that, in sports, it's so that's a good speech. I actually did that at the Avon Crushers, the stadium.
Yes.
So that's the thing too. I went up and said, "Can I do this speech?" And he goes, "Well," and then I said, "Well, you want me to do it?" And then she says, "Yeah, okay, we'll do it."
Well, let me change gears on you a little bit, and you've talked a little bit about the speeches that you give. Could you give us an example of one, and let the audience hear the kind of thing that you do? Can you go into character for us? We have some water there if you want to take a little drink before you talk.
Well, maybe I was thinking of the Soldier's Creed, which
Okay.
Well, I'll do that, and then maybe another one, or
It's up to you.
I like the creeds because although they're to do with the military, all of them have some items in there, some aspirations or virtues that are listed in the creeds that apply to all of us.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, not the parts where they're giving their life, to defend their country. That's not us. I mean, we're giving our life to, work and stuff, and they're protecting that. But so I like them, and like I say, it's whether you're in the Army or Navy, they all are similar, and others, are unique. So, once I forget why I did those, but I think the Soldier's Creed, the Army, is the Army Creed. Well, they were first, they're back in 1796 or whatever. So
Okay.
I kind of do them in order.
All right.
So the Soldier's Creed, see, was it written? Some of these were just kind of written recently. They didn't have the Navy SEAL ethos. I ran into a SEAL recently, and they didn't have that when he was a SEAL. They put it together, 2000 something. But anyway, okay, we'll just do. See if I can do the
Okay.
the Soldier's Creed. Should I look it over here?
Yeah.
The
Thank
Soldier's Creed. I am an American soldier. I am a warrior and a member of a team. I serve the people of the United States and live the Army values. I will always place the mission first. I will never accept defeat. I will never quit. I will never leave a fallen comrade. I am disciplined, physically and mentally tough, trained and proficient in my warrior tasks and drills. I always maintain my arms, my equipment, and myself. I am an expert, and I am a professional. I stand ready to deploy, engage, and destroy the enemies of the United States of America in close combat. I am a guardian of freedom and the American way of life. I am an American soldier.
Okay. All right. Very, very good. That was good.
Another one I'd like to do, I don't know how much time we have, but was my grandfather was born in Ireland, the one that lived in Lorraine. And when he was 93, he was at my Uncle Len's, the doctor in Avon Lake there, at a birthday party. I think he was in his 90s. And he would recite poems now and then, Irish, but he did this one, which is not Irish, it's American, but he found it interesting enough to recite, to memorize, and recited it. So I kind of, in honor of him, and maybe my boys will do it down the road. It's the Village Blacksmith by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow.
Okay.
Under a spreading chestnut tree, the village smithy stands. The smith, a mighty man is he, with large and sinewy hands, and his brawny arms are strong as iron bands. His hair is crisp and black and long, his face is like the tan, his brow is wet with honest sweat. He earns whatever he can, and looks the whole world in the face, for he owes not any man. Week in, week out, from morn till night, you can hear his bellows blow, you can hear him swing his heavy sledge with measured beat and slow, like a sexton ringing the village bell when the evening sun is low. And children coming home from school look in at the open door. They love to see the flaming forge and hear the bellows roar and catch the burning sparks that fly like chaff from a threshing floor. He goes on Sunday to the church and sits among his boys. He hears the parson pray and preach. He hears his daughter's voice singing in the village choir, and it makes his heart rejoice. It sounds to him like her mother's voice, singing in paradise. He needs must think of her once more, how in the grave she lies, and with his hard, rough hand he wipes a tear out of his eyes. Toiling, rejoicing, sorrowing, onward through life he goes. Each morning sees some task begin, each evening sees it close. Something attempted, something done, has earned a night's repose. Thanks to thee, my worthy friend, for the lesson thou hast taught. Thus at the flaming forge of life our fortunes must be wrought. Thus on its sounding anvil shaped each burning deed and thought. End of poem.
Okay. Well, congratulations.
We'd like
Thank
to, when
you
he
for that.
did the end of poem. So,
what would you say to someone who's an aspiring actor? What would you tell them to do, what to do?
well, the thing about acting, Stanislavski says, or a lot of people say, you integrate everything you do into your acting. So do a bunch of stuff, go to art museums, get involved in a lot of things, in life, and then it reflects. You can reflect that in the acting, and it contributes to your acting skills. You'll inform that things inform each other. Whether it's one thing in music might inform some concept in poetry or acting or singing. Mm-hmm. They're all connected, and so the important thing is to it's a place where you can be honest, I guess, mm-hmm. and truthful. The search for truth, I guess, it's one way. I mean, you can play piano, and it's almost my piano playing. Even sometimes I play the same things over and over again, but I play them differently because they're now. I've thought of this as a story now. Instead of just playing the notes and hearing the sounds, it's like, this is a story of immigrants coming over, and it's written. It was written in, like Clair de Lune. It was written by a Frenchman in 1905, and I associate that with the Statue of Liberty, and it's like immigrants coming over, and each little part of it sounds like they want to leave their country, they're coming back, and so you can make up a story in your head, and then it's rewarding to you, and then whether that translates to the audience or not, that's up to you to develop your culture and appreciation of it. So.
How can Avon Lakers get in touch with you? And I think your email and your phone number will appear on the bottom of the screen.
Actingbuff.com is my website. Theater Buff, of course, is taken, so I have Acting Buff.
Okay.
And that is like a blog, kind of like I tell different stories or things that come to mind, some things I want to talk about. I can write it out there. And I also have some calendars on there, which I haven't updated lately, but now that the COVID's over, community theaters are coming back, and
Uh-huh.
there's calendars on there where you can go to a calendar and say, well, what auditions are today or coming up on the weekend, and what theater shows are playing, on the weekend or coming up, and so you can look at it in a calendar format. And I get that information from a thing called Ohio Pal. Fred Sternfeld runs a newsletter, and all these postings are on there.
In summary, what's making sense to you and what doesn't? If you can come up with a summary statement.
Well, I guess, those historical, I think it's important to, encourage patriotism. And whether you're Democrat or Republican, I mean, Frederick Douglass says, tell your wants, tell what you want, and hold your party up to what it professes to be. I'm more Republican, maybe libertarian, but the Republican Party in my mind primarily was, less government, involvement. So that's what and so you want to hold your party up to doing that. I mean, Reagan did a lot of good things, but he also increased the debt. I think that was the first $1 trillion debt that we had. So he didn't really hold up to that part of what a Republican is supposed to be. So so what makes sense is trying to, keep involved, in politics to some degree, because it does affect us all. And, you want to increase freedom, individual freedom. That's what this country is unique
All about, yeah.
Individual freedom. We're a republic with individual rights. A true democracy is, 5 wolves and a pig at the lunch table voting on what we're going to have for lunch. So you can't have a pure democracy. You have to have individual rights, and so
Understand.
So that makes sense to do what you can to support freedom, and freedom has an effect on our closest relationships. Even with Romeo and Juliet, you got two people. They weren't two political parties, but two different families that were warring against each other. So and then they end up dead. And then then their parents. It took that for their parents to reconcile. At the very end of the play, Montague and Capulet get together and they solve their differences. But so it's important to have freedom for not just a political sense, but for a real closest relationship sense. So,
Understand.
that makes sense.
Now I think we're going to have a musical interlude now, but what I'll do is I'll sign off and then we'll have that on the screen, a bit of piano playing. Thank you for watching. Please give us feedback on the show. If you'd like to be on the show, or if you know of some interesting person who would like to be on the show, please get us their contact information. Our email addresses will appear on the bottom of the screen. If you have comments or questions, you certainly can forward them to us. And remember, seatbelts save lives. Thank you for watching.
Hello, yes, I'm going to play a few parts of some music here. I have a one-man show. I did part of it at the Avon Lake Knights of Columbus a while back, and for about an hour or so, I played the piano and did a little introduction to the speeches that I do, then do the speech, and then transition from one to the next using some piano music, usually. So just to give you some idea of what that entails, I'd come out on the stage, and the name of my one-man show is One to Many, No Dupes, where one person speaks to many people. One person is influenced by many people, and there's no dupes. There's no duplicates, and there's nobody who's duped into saying what they believe in. People in history, patriotic, or whether it be from sports or anywhere that are speaking up for something they believe in, they're not duped into saying it. So the name of my show, if you'd like to call me about that, is One to Many, No Dupes. Also, I did want to mention I will be giving some speeches coming up in the next, few months. I will also be doing a speech on a dog, the tribute to the dog. It's about pets, and that's going to be done on 9/11 at the Pat O'Brien Chevy dealership. There's a Cause for Paws organized by Lori Wilbur, and she and her husband had the WOBL radio station until they recently retired in Oberlin. So I'll be doing that tribute to the dog by George Graham Best gave that speech back in the 1800s, and it has to do with pets. So that's 9/11 from 10 to 4 in Vermilion at the Pat O'Brien Chevy dealership. And also in October, there's a women's group in Brecksville where I'll be giving Frederick Douglass's speech on women's suffrage. And again, if you want interested in any of these, you can call me for more information, 440-520-3655. So my one-man show can be customized to I have a list of speeches. If you're interested, you can do half an hour, or 2 hours worth of mostly patriotic speeches, but that include like Lou Gehrig, Vince Lombardi, speeches from Eugene O'Neill, George Patton, Patrick Henry, and a number from Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass shows us what it's like not to have freedom, and some of the passages that I took from his autobiography. So what I do in that one-man show is do a little piano to introduce. Then I'll go into the beginning and say a little bit about, I think the closest thing that our closest relationships are affected by politics, essentially. And Romeo and Juliet wasn't politics, but it's two families. So I do the intro to that, and then after that intro, the prologue, two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona, where we lay our scene. So that introduction, then I end with the just a short little piece, and then I go into the next speech and so forth. Now, after the Declaration of Independence, it's kind of to me, a celebratory event. So I add a little Chopin, simple Chopin waltz. Many of you beginning pianists will recognize. It's simple, but it's to me, the Declaration is simple, and the Constitution, the preamble, are simple things, but a lot went into putting them together. So, and in support of the Declaration ends, I believe, in support of this Declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Similarly, when George Washington retired after 2 terms, back from 1796 to 1787, I believe, it's 8 years, he gave a farewell address that was published in a national newspaper, and I picture him saying that speech, and then sitting down at the piano and playing Schumann's Traumerei. just one or two more here. Yeah, it's like I mentioned earlier, the Clair de Lune was written by I can't think of his name now, but the Frenchman, and published around 1905, Debussy, Claude Debussy. And so this was, I would end my first act with this piece. I'll just do a small part of it. So that's Debussy, Clair de Lune. So that's well, all of us have had dogs. I mentioned the speech about pets, and at the end of that speech, I picture Chopin. He was visiting a friend of his, a lady in France, and she said, "Chopin, if I had your talent, I'd write a song for that dog right there." So he went to the piano and eventually hammered out the minute waltz. Not that it's done in a minute, but it's minute waltz. It comes from a minute dog, a small dog. So that's where the name of minute waltz comes from. But I think you'll see in it some action that you might see in a small dog, possibly chasing its tail. So I think that's all I need to do today. So again, contact me if you're interested in any of those things coming up. If you want to have a small group together for you can look at the list of my speeches you can find on my website, actingbuff.com. So I think that's it. We'll play some music to get us out of here. Thank you for listening and watching. Thank you, Rudy, for having me.
The preceding program was presented to you by a community producer. The statements, views, and opinions expressed were not necessarily those of ALC TV or the City of Avon Lake.